All right, it's 6:30. We're still admitting some families. I'm going to go ahead. My name's Ashley Myers, and I am the preschool director here in Urbandale. And we are going to have a virtual PBIS family night. This night gives us the opportunity to share what ECPBIS is in our classrooms and how we are implementing PBIS in the preschool classrooms. It also gives us the opportunity to share strategies that we're using in the classrooms and language that we're using, and give you ideas for how you can do similar things at home. So this is just kind of our first point of contact during the year. Also moving forward this fall, we'll have parent-teacher conferences in November. We'll be scheduling a parent advisory night. So there will be more opportunities to collaborate with each other later on this fall. And then later on in the year, the teachers will invite families into the classrooms to do some activities as well. So I'm going to start out by introducing Brianna Sayre-Geyser. Brianna helps do a lot of our professional development work with the preschool teachers here in Urbandale, and she's also on our PBIS leadership team. So I'm going to hand it over to Brianna to get started. Also, if you are at home, we know you have your families there, so I just encourage you to keep your volume on silent while we're presenting. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight.
Thanks, Ashley. And also a big thank you to the teachers for taking some time this evening to join us. I believe all of the teachers are also on this Zoom call with us as well, so that they can hear what we're sharing with you. So if you do have additional questions after we're done this evening, you feel free to either contact myself or Ashley or your classroom teacher as well. They would be a wealth of knowledge also. So we're just going to get started. We have just a short amount of time tonight, but again, I appreciate all of you taking a little bit of time on actually a rainy day, in which we haven't had that in a while. So we will also share some resources, and after we conclude this evening, Ashley will make sure that these slides are available to you all and the recording. So if you know somebody else that wasn't able to join, they will be able to access that recording at another time. So let's just get started. And again, you can use the chat if you wish for questions that we will answer kind of at the end. But as Ashley said, if you can keep your mute on, that would be fantastic. It just reduces the background noise. And then again, just wanted to remind everyone that we are recording. So we have areas of child development, and many of you are very familiar with some of the areas like physical, language, literacy, math, cognitive. Our focus for, as Ashley said, ECPBIS, or Early Childhood Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, is truly this social emotional piece. And some of you may have heard about something called the pyramid model. That's what we're going to be referencing when we talk about ECPBIS. Those terms kind of go hand in hand. So we're going to talk about briefly, like, what does this mean for you in your home, and what is the language that the teachers are using in the classroom. So hopefully this will clear up maybe a little bit of some of the wonderings that you've had when your children maybe are talking about Urbies, or they're talking about how we're being safe. So tonight's going to give you a chance to have a brief overview of what does that mean and look like. So again, we will be focusing tonight mostly on that social emotional piece, but we do find that balance here. And the reason why we have the state of Iowa is because the teachers are responsible for the Iowa Early Learning Standards. And part of the Iowa Early Learning Standards is not just literacy and mathematics or language development or cognitive skills, but it truly is that social emotional piece as well. And really, since the beginning of the first day of school, the teachers have placed a lot of focus on developing those social emotional skills in the classroom. So some of that learning has to do with teaching kids how to manage their emotions and their behaviors at school, recognizing their own emotions, and really valuing how they can talk about when they're feeling a certain way. They might be talking about maybe even something that they're good at, maybe something that's hard, but all of those are great skills for preschoolers to be able to recognize when they need help or when they're frustrated or upset. Making good choices or social choices. Teachers in the classrooms also teach the students about problem solving skills and how to solve problems when it happens, because those happen in life and they happen in preschool all the time. Somebody has a toy I want. What can I do appropriately to get that toy? We're also working on forming positive relationships. So it's not just the relationships with the adults in the classroom, but it's also the relationships with children to children, those peer-to-peer relationships. We're trying to teach kids how to make a friend and how to ask to join play and how to give compliments to each other. So those are all some of the skills that the teachers work on throughout the year that they're in preschool. And then also that idea of dealing with conflict. Like I said, the teachers work on teaching problem solving skills and practicing this when there's opportunities for problems that arise, how are children handling them and dealing with them? And then they can acknowledge when they are handling those in an appropriate manner. And this last piece is talking about showing empathy to others. We know that it's really difficult for preschoolers to sometimes show empathy, but that is a skill that we recognize when we see children that are showing empathetic skills to others, but it is a skill that sometimes develops a little bit later in the early childhood years, sometimes not even until first or second grade. So here is the pyramid model that we spoke of. This is a website here that you can access. Now, I know that you're not able to link to it right now, but I do want you, and if you have something close by, you might write down this website and we will share it also. Again, like I said, the slides will be shared in other resources, but if you want to jot down challengingbehavior.org, and make sure it's .org because .com is different, but challengingbehavior.org is an excellent resource for childcare providers, for families, for people like myself that do a lot of professional learning. Challengingbehavior.org has a whole section on family involvement. You can find some visual cues on there if you're wanting to practice teaching your child how to go to bed at night, things like that. There's a wealth of knowledge on that website. So please feel free to access that, and it's all free and downloadable. So that's the intent and the purpose of that website, is for childcare providers and families to have a place to go when sometimes maybe they're struggling with something with their child. So the goal of that pyramid model is really to promote success for every child in the classroom. And we want to create environments where every child feels good about going to school and feels like it's a safe place to go. We design those early childhood environments to promote child engagement as well. We want children to be engaged in their learning and have multiple opportunities to practice skills. So anytime we can design an environment that can promote engagement for all, then children feel good about being in that place. And then we really try to focus on teaching children what to do, as opposed to what to like not do or stop doing. So instead of saying, stop running, we're going to use words like use your walking feet in the hallway, things like that. So it's really kind of reframing even how you using those words with children. And we want to teach the expectations and the routines. So we also know that challenging behavior sometimes happens. Sometimes it's referred to maybe as a behavior miscue, but it's usually has a purpose and a message. Either a child is trying to tell you something, but doesn't know how to go about saying it. They might be bored. They might be feeling sad. Some children just want to get somebody's attention, but again, don't know how to do that correctly. Some child might want to access something, like I want to get that toy, or I want to do that activity. And again, they don't know how to go about asking and doing that appropriately. So often challenging behavior is when a child might lack a social skill or, again, a communication skill. So in preschool, that's the job of those adults in the room, is to help teach children these skills that they might not have yet, and then acknowledge the students when they see those skills in practice, when they see them implementing those skills and actually even generalizing them to other settings. And sometimes we see this behavior because it usually is working for the child. So if a behavior that persists over time is getting that child what they want, then they're going to keep doing that behavior. So again, we focus on teaching the child what we want them to do instead, and what we want them to replace maybe that challenging behavior with. So another strategy, and an evidence-based strategy that the teachers and the adults in the classroom use a lot, is this idea of filling up a child's emotional bank. And you can do this at home as well. Some of you may have heard, like, you give a 5-to-1 ratio of positives to negative. Some times in education, we've heard it be even higher than that, like a 12-to-1 ratio. But the idea is that we want to fill a child's emotional piggy bank. And filling that bank can be a variety of different things. It can be, just good morning, it's going to be a great day today. I'm so proud of you. It can be descriptive terms. It can be offering choices to the child. It can be playing together. Attention, where we're all going to sit together and maybe play a family game or go to the park and play at the park together. But all of that is filling up that emotional bank. And we want those banks of all of the children to be full. And we know sometimes it's hard. And there's a resource here that you can access again after, that's kind of called the hot buttons, meaning that you might have some hot buttons where your child can push those buttons. They might know that you're on the phone, and so I'm going to start whining and crying because I can get your attention. So this might be a resource that you can access later if you're thinking, yeah, that sometimes happens to me, and I want to try and churn it around. I want to try and make those deposits into their emotional bank as opposed to withdrawals. So withdrawals are things like saying, no, stop, don't do that. Withdrawals can also be demands, and this happens to every parent, every teacher oftentimes has to give a direction or a demand. What we want to do is make sure that we're filling their bank with enough positives before we start giving those demands out. So again, in the morning, when you're getting your child ready to go, making sure that we're filling those banks with positives before we start saying, like, time to get in the car, time to brush your teeth, where's your backpack? Let's go, we're running late. Then all those become withdrawals. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about, am I filling their emotional bank, or am I taking some withdrawals out? Something you may or may not have heard about, but this is happening in your preschool classrooms, is the teachers are teaching about green choices or red choices. So they have some visual cues. They may refer to these before every activity. They talk about a red choice as being a not okay choice. Like, that's not what we want to see happening in preschool. But a green choice is what we want to see. And we give acknowledgement and praise when we see those green choices. So there might be some different visuals in classrooms, but that also could be something you could do at home as well. What's a red choice at home, or what's an unsafe choice? And then what's a green choice? So at Urbandale Preschool, you may have heard kids talking about the Super Jayhawks, or that we earned an Urbie. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. But they have big expectations. So our big expectations are that we will be safe, that we're kind, and that we're responsible. And then in preschool, we want to make sure that we're also having fun too. So that's the most important part, I think. But some examples of what that might look like at home is, you could say, I'm being safe. When we're in the Target parking lot, or when we're in any parking lot, I hold a hand and I hold an adult's hand. That's being safe. I'm being kind when I help my little brother. I'm being responsible when I clean up my toys, or I take my dish to the sink, something like that, right? So anytime you see some of these things happening in your home, acknowledge that and tell them, and try and use those same words of safe, kind, and responsible. Responsible is a big vocabulary word, but our children hear it enough, and they're hearing it over and over, that they understand exactly what that means, right? I'm responsible, I'm hanging up my backpack. So just keep that in mind when you're also, using some of that terminology at home with your children. Here's a couple examples of visuals. The teachers have some sort of visual up in their room so that they can kind of break down what do each of those expectations mean. What does be safe mean? What does be responsible and be kind? And those can also link to the red and green choices as well. And so I've mentioned the URBIs and celebrations. So some of you maybe have heard that we earned a celebration, or we got to enough URBIs today. Well, the URBIs are actually earned as a class. So a whole class can earn URBIs. Sometimes it might be for an individual student and what a student has done, but it all goes on the same class-wide chart. So these are some examples of charts that are in classrooms. An URBI is just kind of that small little circle token that you see. And the idea is that the class earns enough URBIs to fill their chart, and then they get to have a celebration. These can happen daily, sometimes even more than once a day, because we really want our children to buy in to that idea that when we do what we're supposed to do, we can get some cool stuff in return. So the URBIs are also handed out by all the adults in the room. So any adult can give an URBI. Another teacher can give an URBI to another class when they see them doing good things in the hallway, or coming in from being out on the playground, or at lunch. So these are just opportunities that children can earn basically positive descriptive feedback that then can earn them a class-wide celebration or a surprise. So that might be something that you've heard from your children about an URBI award, or we got some URBIs today. And those celebrations are meant to be just super simple and fast, and then we're moving right along with our day. So as opposed to like some big, like homecoming week, right? Like I think they've had pajama day and maybe crazy hair day. These celebrations are meant to be like, we earn some extra bubbles while we're lining up to go outside, or we get a quick dance party before we go sit down at large group. Those are examples of some quick celebrations that the kids earn, and they really, really enjoy having those quick celebrations. Here's a great resource, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. This is one of my actually most favorite resources for families. This is called the Help Us Have a Good Day, Positive Strategies for Families. So here's just some very simple things that you can do in your home. Give a child choice, right? And I usually recommend choices that you can live with, right? So it's not, what do you want for breakfast? You know that breakfast is going to be cereal. Do you want your cereal in a green bowl or an orange bowl? It's not kind of this open-ended, you're just giving them choices, but it makes that child feel like they're a little bit in control of the situation. Remind me of the rules. So if you're going to go to the playground, remind them of what does it look like to be safe when we're at the park or the playground. And then also remind them when it's time to go, what might be your transition. Do you say 5 more minutes and we're going to leave, giving them kind of that, know when something's going to happen. And that's getting into this next one. Help me know when it's going to change. There's going to be 5 more minutes until I have to leave. Now, most young children don't really have a concept of time. So 5 minutes to one child might mean, great, I get to run all the way across the playground and go play on the other play structure. So sometimes we have to be a little bit more descriptive of what does that mean. So it maybe on the playground, it's you get 2 more turns down the slide, or I'll push you on the swing, 3 more big pushes, and then it's time to go. So really being a little bit more descriptive. Also, anytime you can catch your child being good, especially when you see some of those expectations that we talked about. You're being so safe and you're holding my hand in the parking lot. You are being so responsible. You put your backpack away when we got home. Wow, so that you can really reinforce those behaviors. And then again, this final piece as far as tell me exactly what to do. Sometimes that might even be a visual, right? Show me what's going to happen. So it's time for bed. I need to get my pajamas. I need to brush my teeth. We get to read a story, and then it's time for bed. So this one-page handout is actually probably one of my most favorites to share with others, because it really is an easy way to spell out kind of what are some of those basic things that you can do at home. So I'm just going to go through a couple brief slides here of a few other things that you can go do at home. And then keeping in mind that conferences are coming up and there's other resources that you can have available that you can always follow up with some other questions as well. So having that consistent routine at home, anytime you can have a consistent routine, it will be so much better for your child. So if you have a before school routine, maybe a bedtime routine, and then possibly even if you're playing a game, you might have a routine for that. Probably the two most beneficial routines to have are that before school and that bedtime. And if you can keep it as consistent as possible, then your child will actually know and will be able to be independent and responsible to do those things on their own. So this family guide routine is another excellent resource that you can always access. And there's some great visual cues in there as well if you want to add some visuals to these routines. You can also give guidance to those transitions, given a warning, like I mentioned just a second ago, or using some sort of transition strategy, like I'm going to race you to the car, or let's count down and see who can get there first. Or you can also teach steps, like first we're going to do this, then we'll find a chair, then you can have a snack. So sometimes we call that a first then, right? First you do this, and then you can do that. So here's a couple additional resources for those visuals. Also, building those positive relationships with adults, just even, listening to what your child has to say, joining in play with them is one of the best things. Asking a lot of those open-ended questions if you feel like your child is able to respond. Sometimes if we ask too many questions, then it sometimes can be hard for a child and become a withdrawal. Sometimes it's even just commenting about what the child is doing and using that positive voice, and then having extended conversations with them. Even talking about specific things when you come and pick them up. Hey, what story did you listen to today? Oh, tell me about did you play in blocks or did you play in dramatic play? Like giving them some clear things that you can talk about when you pick them up. You can tell children what to do rather than what not to do. And I think we kind of already covered that. So here's some examples of those reframes that you can use. If they're taking a toy away from a sibling, if you want the block, you can ask them for them. How do you think you can ask for them? And model that if necessary. So here's just a few examples of that, how to reframe. And then thinking about maybe even establishing some home rules, just like the expectations that we talked about at school. Here's just a couple examples. And it can be as simple as be safe, be kind, and be responsible. Or I think this example is be helpful. There might be younger siblings in the home. So being helpful is a little bit easier for kids to understand than responsible. And modeling those friendship skills. So something that the teachers work a lot on is 5 different skills to be a good friend. And you can also model those as well. But the next slide will talk about what those skills are. But here's this idea of just, positively talking about your friends, talking with children about kind things you do for your friends. It creates that atmosphere of kindness. And then, using the words friends as you are speaking about people. So that's another great way to model those friendships. Here are the 5 skills that every preschool teacher will be teaching in their classroom. So the first one is getting somebody's attention. So you may have already noticed that maybe your child is tapping you on the shoulder or trying to tap you on the shoulder. That's one of the skills that some of our children learn. If they can't get somebody's attention by calling their name, then it's okay to tap them to try and get their attention. So the children are learning how to get their friends' attention appropriately. They're also then will learn how to share. And this share means like giving something to somebody. Here, you can have this block. And then another type of share is called share requests, where I ask, can I have that? Can I have that fire truck? Can I have that ball? And then something called a play organizer. This is where we work with kids on kind of that, a little bit of that conflict resolution, or how do they play together. So it might be we're in the dramatic play and who it has which roles in the dramatic play. And then finally, another skill that I feel like is worked on all the time in the classrooms, at least anytime I've been in the classrooms, is this idea of giving compliments. So, really complimenting each other for the great things that they do. So we also teach about emotions. So if you can, again, model that, talk to your kids about how to express their emotions appropriately. This particular handout that is linked here gives some visual cues. So if you do maybe have a child that's struggling a little bit with expressing themselves, you might use some visual cues with them. But emphasizing, like that, it's okay to talk about those feelings. It's okay to say, I'm really sad, and this is why I'm sad. So sometimes as adults, we have to model that so that kids then understand that that's easy. We can do that. I can do that too. And then again, we have this idea of problem solving rather than punishing. So the teachers do teach something called a solution kit. There's a link here to a solution kit at home, but this is that idea that we're going to teach kids how to solve those behaviors, like helping the child understand what would be appropriate behavior. So instead of a timeout or something like that, we're going to problem solve through what would be a better way next time that I can get my friend's attention, or what can I do next time to get that access to that toy or that center that I want. So thinking about this idea of a solution kit. And then I think this might be the last, is this talks about the self-regulation skills. So another great skill, again, this is kind of similar, but we'll teach students and children how to take a break, or how to go to a calm area to calm themselves. So we're teaching kids that self-regulation, like I'm getting so upset, I need to go take a break, or I need to take 5 deep breaths, or another resource that you see here is called smell and blow. I need to smell the flowers and blow out the pinwheel, and smell and blow. So those are easy things that you can teach at home as well when you might see your child escalating or getting upset. What are ways that you can teach that self-regulation? I know that the teachers include the Backpack Connection series in some of their newsletters. So this might be something that either you've seen or you probably will see. This is also on that same challengingbehavior.org site. But there's multiple ones, and they're a great resource because they say this is what we're going to try at school, and this is what you can try at home. So if there's anything that even you already are thinking that you might need, contact your teacher and they might be able to send you one of these resources. And then finally, this is just kind of that last slide that gives all of the examples and the resources. Here's a link to where you can access all of them on that same challengingbehavior.org site. So please feel free to access any of those, or again, talk to your teacher or Ashley or myself for more information. So that was a lot in 30 minutes. And I know I talked really fast, but I'll just pause here for a second and see if there's any questions, or again, I open up or welcome any teachers that would like to add to any of this information. Usually because it's 7 o'clock at night, the teachers are saying, we need to get ready for tomorrow. Go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, I think that was enough wait time, but please feel free to make sure to send me an email or send your teacher an email if you have any specific questions that you'd like some resources or more information about, and we'd be happy to send it to you. I will also be sending out a follow-up email to all families that will include the recording link, and then it will also include the resources and the slides that were shared tonight. So that'll be information that I'll be sharing at a later date. Things to look forward to this fall, like I mentioned before, the teachers will be sending information out about parent-teacher conferences in November. I'll send out another newsletter later on this fall that will also include information about a parent advisory night. That's a night that we'll have in person where you can come meet with a group of teachers and we invite a group of parents to come in and we get your feedback and input on how preschool's going. Listen to any things that you would like to see improve. And we take all that information and we use that to help us set goals for the future. But also make sure that you are always welcome to email me myself or the teachers if you ever have any questions, concerns. Don't hesitate to reach out to us because we want to make sure that you have the best first experience at school possible with your preschoolers here in Urbandale. And I just want to thank all of you that attended tonight. Welcome to our program. We've had a lot of fun getting to know the students and build relationships already this school year. And we look forward to interacting with you guys and collaborating in the future. So thank you all for attending tonight.
Just going to stop share. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you.